Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Muslim Sex Podcast. I have some exciting news. I want to let all of you know that I am opening up my office, my private office, where I can see you here in New York, and it will be opening at the end of this month. So, this month is now June. So, at the end of this month, my office will be up and running, and I would love for you to come in and see me as a patient. So, go to V Health. So that is FEMMEVIEHEALTH.com and sign up to be a member of my concierge gynecology practice. And you can also come to see me for regular visits, or if you have a problem visit, come and see me. I, of course, focus on menopause and sexual health. So if you're having any of those issues, I'd love to see you. And make sure you come in and say hi. I'd love to meet you in person. So also, the retreat is still going on. It'll be happening September 16th through the 23rd, and we only have a few spots left. So if you were thinking about coming to the retreat where we focus on nutrition and sexual health and menopausal health, you need to register today because spots are filling up. And once it's sold out, it will be sold out and we will not be taking any more participants. So make sure you go and register for that as well. Also, as always, please remember to like and share this podcast. Leave me a 5-star review so that it shows up and so that we can get the word out about menopausal and sexual health, as well as intimacy and intimacy coaching. So if you love this podcast, please make sure to leave me a 5-star review. And now on to the episode. I am an American board certified OBGYN, a mom, a Muslim, and I'm talking about sex. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast. Welcome to the Muslim Sex Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Sadaf, and this episode is everything you need to know about women's health and sexual wellness coaching. But before we get into it, the first thing I want to make very clear is I'm not giving any type of medical advice. If you have any questions about your health, please speak with your healthcare provider. And if you have any questions about your religion, please feel free to go ask your friendly neighborhood religious leader. This is the Muslim Sex Podcast because I just happen to be a Muslim woman that talks about sex. So I am super excited to have on with me Miss Gabriella Espinosa. Gabriella, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
And please feel free to introduce yourself to all the listeners and viewers that may not know about you.
Well, thank you. Thank you again. I am a women's health and sexual wellness coach. I also host a podcast called Pleasure in the Pause. And my work is all about empowering women, midlife women, to own their pleasure, power, and purpose through menopause and beyond. My work lies at the intersection of embodiment, Eastern traditional wisdom, female sexuality, and menopausal health. I started out as a yoga teacher, 20 years ago. So that informs my practice. And it's been about 15 years of guiding women to know, trust, and appreciate their bodies through one-to-one and group coaching programs, online courses, and international retreats.
Wow, that is amazing. So I'd love to know more. What got you interested in this facet of coaching?
Well, it was really my own personal experience of moving into menopause. Well, actually perimenopause. I had not even heard of the word back then, with very little knowledge about my body, about changing hormones, and what to expect. I considered myself a pretty educated woman when I have 3 kids, and when I became pregnant, I dove into all the books, took all the courses to have a good positive birth, which I did. But when I reached this period of perimenopause, I had nothing, no language, no knowledge, nothing. And I always say I was left totally in the dark. It was like a light switched off. And I felt a lot of shame. I felt, does this mean I'm getting old? Does this mean my sex life is over? So I really Fortunately, I had my yoga practice at the time, so I used it quite a bit to help regulate my nervous system, to move into a parasympathetic rest and relax state. I experienced a lot of anxiety early on, heart palpitations, but that's really all I had to lean on, my yoga practices. But then when my libido started to totally take a nosedive, I also realized I had no language. I didn't know my body. I didn't know anything about sexuality, only what I had learned from the movies, from Cosmo magazine.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I realized, what I needed was something very, very different than what I had learned. So I went on this deep dive journey of learning about female sexuality, sacred sexuality practices. I studied with experts around the world, and I've spent the greater part of the last 10 years um, diving into those practices and then sharing those practices with the women I coach. So I really want to take the mystery away from menopause and this incredible chapter in our lives called midlife. I feel it's, yeah, a new chapter to awaken ourselves sexually, to awaken to our true power and how we show up in the world.
Fantastic. I love that. And I find that, here in the US, we are so lucky because there is so much information out there, right? You can go on so many different Instagram, people's Instagrams and see physicians talking about menopause, perimenopause. You have people talking about sexual medicine, but, that's just not the case all over the world, right? We know that I'm actually of Pakistani descent, and recently I visited Pakistan back in February. And I will tell you that most people, right, like you said, with all that shame that there is, a lot of women out there do not know anything about perimenopause, menopause. They have no idea what's going on with their bodies. And there are not very many practitioners that know or that can even explain what's happening to women's bodies. Not only that, but the access that we have here to medication is just amazing. Whereas, in Pakistan, I went and I spoke with my cousin who's an OBGYN, and then I spoke with other, a few of my cousins over there, and they have no access to hormones. They just don't have them over there. I gave one of my cousins estrogen, but I forgot the progesterone. And so I told her, well, you're going to have to find progesterone. You can't just take estrogen by itself. And she couldn't take it. She ended up sending that back with my mom, who just came back, because she said she could not find progesterone anywhere where she lived. And she couldn't take the estrogen. So I feel that here we almost take for granted all the resources and knowledge that we have, because in different parts of the world, they just don't have access to that. So I'm so glad that you are spreading that knowledge, and with your podcast, and you have so many different people on your podcast talking about menopause and perimenopause, so women can advocate for themselves and have the agency that you felt that perhaps when you started to go through it, you didn't have any knowledge.
Yeah, I, I love that story that you tell about your family member in Pakistan. I am of Latin American origin. My family is from Ecuador. So I find those same stories when I go back to Ecuador, and women in my family, they secretly come up to me and they whisper in my ear. They're like, "You're doing a great," they follow me on Instagram or Facebook. They're like, "I'm so glad you're talking about this. You're doing a great job." And, we've been silenced for so long around these issues of our sexuality and our reproductive health. We've only been taught to have babies, and then what happens next?
Yes.
So yeah, I find my mission, I think your mission too, we speak the same language, I feel,
Yeah.
Dr. Sadaf, is really to unmute that silence. We have existed in systems
Yes.
that silence us, silence
Yes.
our full
100%.
expression as women. And I think women, are tired of that. And they look up to people like you and to me to really kind of be a voice for
Yes.
them and give them courage, because this work that we're doing, Dr. Sadaf, takes courage.
Yeah.
It takes courage, and I operate from that heart, um, that deep, heartfelt sense of diving into my courage and my bravery to really unmute the silence and really allow women to experience the pleasure that is their birthright.
Amazing. I love that. So, I'd love for you to talk about perhaps some case scenarios that you've had of where women have come to you for coaching during midlife. What are the types of things that they come to you for? And what are the things that you tell them that they have access to that they can do?
Mm. So when women come to me, and I'm sure you've heard this before too, right? It's the famous "I don't feel like myself anymore," right? Uh, I want my partner. I'm in a loving relationship, but
Mm.
the desire is just not there. I don't know what I want.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know what I want. So I start from the very simple question, and I asked you this question when you came on my podcast. What does pleasure mean to you?
Yes. It's
So
a
many
fantastic
women
question.
have not been asked that.
Yes.
We have been in service of others, making sure others are happy,
Yes.
others experience pleasure. We give our pleasure away. So, this
Yes.
very simple question that I ask, what does pleasure mean to you, really stumps women. So, we start there. What Another question that I ask is, what do you desire?
Mm.
Again, no one's asked them that question. They've suppressed their desires so much. And really, part of the reason they come to me with is that, and you may be familiar with this psycho emotional aspect of menopause, is that for so long we've been suppressing our desires, our wants, our needs. I see it as when our progesterone starts to decline, our happy, calming hormone, we start to feel everything that we've suppressed starts to come up to the surface. That's what I find that that's the gift of menopause. It allows all these things that we suppress to come up to the surface, and so women start to feel that inkling. They start to feel those messages. I want something more than this, but they don't know what it is. So I love journaling as a practice. There's so many
Mm.
on the mental health benefits of journaling, the emotional health benefits of journaling. So we start with this. What do you desire? So I get when
Mm.
I journal, I desire, I desire, I desire. Write down 10 things you desire. And if you don't know what you desire, because a lot of women get stuck there. I
Yeah.
say, what is it that you don't desire? Because it's very easy for us to know what we don't desire. I don't want to be put at the bottom of my to-do list. I don't want to keep, putting myself last. So many things that we can say we don't want. And so when you start to write down the things you don't want, you can use them as a beautiful entry point to then flip the script and say, this is what I want. This is what I desire. Um,
Love it.
so
Mhm.
that's where I start with people with their desires.
You know what I love? I have to tell you this. And when you asked me that question, I was thinking, but right now it actually just came to me is that when you ask the question of what does pleasure mean to you, it's
Mhm.
really by you asking that question, you are giving the other person permission to experience pleasure.
Mm.
That's what it is. It's that we often do not give ourselves permission to experience pleasure, right? We don't, as women, we don't give ourselves permission for so many things, but I think pleasure is one of them.
Mm.
And I think that when you ask, just you asking, and even you asking, what do you desire? You are giving that other person that you're talking to permission to have desire, to want desire. And I think that in itself is so empowering.
Oh wow! I just felt like tingling sensations in my body because it just, yeah. I love this this observation from you that you were giving permission to desire, to
Yeah.
to experience pleasure, and that's something. That's what I want for every woman to experience. I want that for everyone. That's my deepest heart's desire. That's my desire, to have every woman experience the innate pleasure that we have within us. So thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that observation.
Yeah, I think it's so important because, I when you read so many books, right? When you read like Emily Nagoski, you read all these authors, you find out that so much of it, and you and I talked about this before, so much of it has to do with our thoughts, and so much of it has to do with, you know, us grounding ourselves in just where we are and just being present at the moment. And when you give yourself that permission, then you can start to explore. Like it's the same thing when you grow up with sex negativity, right? When you
Mhm,
grow up with that sex negativity, you don't give yourself permission.
mhm,
You're not giving yourself permission to explore. You're not giving yourself permission to learn. You're not giving because everything seems wrong. It seems like a sin. It seems like, you're doing something wrong when you're not. You're really just accepting what, a higher power, whatever you believe in, has given you to experience pleasure. And pleasure is actually your right.
mhm.
I mean, our bodies would not have been created in such a fashion if it wasn't our birthright to experience pleasure. So when you give yourself that permission, then you give yourself permission to do everything else that will eventually get you to that point where you're able to experience pleasure.
Yeah, so many women I talk to believe, and I believe this too, that it's selfish, that it's indulgent. And we then enter into intimacy feeling that we're not worthy of receiving pleasure. That worthiness factor is really very, very, very important. And I really want women to feel that they are worthy of receiving it. So when I like to start really small, right? So that it doesn't feel so overwhelming. So when I tell women, when you think about pleasure, look for what brings you joy, what lights
Yes.
you up, what puts a spring in your step or a smile on your face. And it could be anything. It could be a walk in nature, dancing, good food, anything that makes you feel alive and vibrant. And it doesn't have to go to the sexual, right? I don't even go to the sexual because sometimes that can feel overwhelming, or women can feel, I'm not ready to go there yet. And if you're experiencing the changes of menopause, you may feel already that you're broken there, right? And I don't want women to feel that way. So it doesn't matter what it is. What matters is bringing, as you said, mindfulness to the things that bring us pleasure, so we consciously cultivate more of it.
Yes.
Focus on those things that bring you joy, make them a priority, enjoy them with full awareness, so that we bring a broader, more fulfilling meaning to our life experiences. So, you shared with me on my podcast this practice of sensate focus. I find that engaging through the senses is a wonderful
Mhm.
portal, wonderful doorway. So just in your day to day life, right? Focusing on smell, taste, touch, sound, sight, all around you. Spend time engaging with your senses to introduce more feeling and connection into your life. And believe me, this awareness ripples out into your intimate life and into your sexual experiences when you choose to go there. So, you can start by asking yourself, what are the smells, taste, and textures of the meal I'm eating? What
Yes.
are my eyes taking in as I walk out in nature? How does this warm shower feel on my body? What emotions come up when I listen to my favorite song? How does it feel to move my body? What does it feel like to rest my head on my pillow? So bringing in, I don't know if this is just sort of a broader kind of application of that sensate focus um, practice that you often talk about, just
Yeah.
integrate it into your day-to-day life.
Yeah, I love that. And, actually, so there's a book called Positive Intelligence, and it's this author, Shirzad Shamin, and he has a course actually out at Stanford. And he talks about how we have like two parts of our brain, one that's always judging everything and judging us and everything around us. And then there's a different part of our brain that doesn't do that, is more, the positive aspect of our brain, and then how we can really cultivate that positive intelligence by focusing on our senses, right? Really, and that we talked about how that really helps to decrease anxiety as well, because we're really
Mhm.
just focused on the here and now, and we're focused on the touch and the pressure, and what does my finger feel like, what do the ridges of my fingers feel like, and you're really just trying to bring your attention and all your senses to it, to really just kind of decrease that anxiety, decrease all of the stress that we may have, and really just focusing on that to help bring about this positive intelligence in our brain. So I like how you bring up all your senses, because I think that that's kind of similar idea of really focusing on everything that's going on around us, because I feel like we get so busy with our busy, hectic lives that we really don't stop to kind of look at what's happening around us.
Yeah, and I really do feel when you widen the definition of pleasure for yourself, you make more available for you
Yes.
to yourself, right? It expands your capacity to experience pleasure. I think what you're talking about is creating new pleasure pathways in our brain, right? When we pay attention to day-to-day pleasures, simple pleasures, it makes more available to us, makes us more open to pleasure in the sexual or erotic realm when we want to go there.
Yes, yes, absolutely. When you can just, experience pleasure just by drinking your favorite drink, right? And you can feel that sensation of that drink going down your throat. And, what does it taste like? And what does it, what did it smell like? All of those things, right? I think that's the key thing, is really bringing in all of our sensations into our experiences to really make them more enriching. And I think that that really is the key. So I'd love to hear more about your coaching. So you said that journaling is one of the first things you do, and I love that you have people define what pleasure is. I think that is so important. Are there any other things that you do that help women as they are going through midlife and maybe experiencing a crisis, right? So many women, and I don't know how it is in the Hispanic culture, but I can tell you that at least in my little world of my culture, women actually look forward to menopause,
Ah, no.
and they really embrace the idea of not having to have periods anymore. You know,
Mhm.
in our religion, when we are on our period, we don't fast, we don't pray, and we have to make up those fasts. But it's almost like a pause that's put into your life. So when you're no longer on your period, you just don't. You don't need to take those breaks, and so almost like there's like I don't know. I almost feel like maybe there's like a greater connection to a higher being, at that time, because you're not taking those breaks that were created for us. And now you're just able to focus on, I don't know, maybe more spirituality.
Mm.
And so a lot of women in my culture actually look forward to menopause. I mean, I remember telling my mom I was having like these irregular menses, whatever, and she was like, oh yeah, you'll be so happy when they're done. Like it wasn't something to be feared. And I almost feel like in Western culture, we have this fear of getting older, right? A fear of aging. We don't really embrace, like, say, perimenopause or menopause, because in fact, when I say to patients like, oh, I focus on perimenopause and menopause, and some of my friends will be like, oh, no, I'm not there yet. I'm not there. I'm not one of them. I'm still getting my period. So I'll be like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I think perhaps our cultures of origin share this respect, this sort of matriarchal lineage. I'm not sure. Correct me if I'm wrong. In Latin American culture, there's a very strong matriarchal presence, and so older women are revered. They're respected. They're visible in all aspects of society. You include them in everything. And
Yeah.
so I saw that growing up. My grandmothers, my aunts, my mothers, there was such care and attention placed on them. And they're central to our family unit. And so, what I find when this happens, that because they are central and they're visible, they take care of themselves. They put on their my aunt who's 90 years old, 93 years old, bless her. She still puts on her red lipstick. She still, looks at them in the mirror and tries to dress up for, occasions. She still dances to music. There's still this sense of freedom on the other. There's sense, yeah, that's what I've witnessed. A sense of freedom on the other side, and that's what I've witnessed. That's what I want to embody. And yeah, I'm constantly battling with some of the ageist beliefs that I feel exist in US culture. And it's very different. I see a very different reality when I go back to home in Latin America, to Ecuador.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? There, it's just it's fascinating to see how different cultures react to aging and getting older, and some cultures see it as as not a good thing, which is unfortunate, and other cultures really embrace it, which I love. And I think that honestly, there is no other choice to getting older. The other choice is not that great, and so I think it's a blessing when we're able to get older and experience a different phase of our life. So, you mentioned journaling. You
Yes.
mentioned about embodying ourselves and experiencing our senses. How else do you help women?
So I work a lot with somatic practices. So
Mm,
somatics is it's a whole body of body-based practices of taking the practitioner or taking the client into their own internal body world to
mm.
experience sensation. So it's not so much a mind focus. I know I also practice mindfulness. Mindfulness is really about that mind body connection. Somatics is really about the pure body connection. And so
Ah,
what I find with a lot of women is that they are constantly in their minds and they can't get into their bodies. So mindfulness practices are great to create that mind body connection, that presence, that intention. Somatic practices go a little bit, um, they're more isolated in terms of what is the body experiencing, what are the sensations, the physical sensations, the emotions. And so I'm trained in a somatic based movement modality called the non-linear movement method, which is a very gentle movement practice that allows people to unwind stress, unwind tension, unwind what the body's holding for you. Our body holds so much old limiting beliefs, old traumas, wounds, old car accidents. So it's a slowly about winding, and rinsing and releasing some of those things that the body is holding. So through these gentle movement practices, it facilitates greater self-awareness, clearer boundaries. It increases self-esteem. It helps you regulate your emotions. It enhances cognitive processing, better decision making. It enhances body confidence, a greater sense of intuition, and really a sense of feeling both connected to yourself and to others. They're very beautiful and powerful practices. They're not sexual practices. I just want to say that you do them with your clothes on. You do them, you can either do them standing or seated or on your hands and knees. And they're just very gentle movement practices that I guide you through. So I give you a series of prompts. And usually I give you a playlist of beautiful music and I guide you through this practice so you can tune into your own internal body world and just allow yourself to move as you're feeling, to move as your thoughts, to move as your sensations, to move with your feelings. And women always report there's just this immediate sense of release, this immediate sense of connection with their bodies that they never have felt before, because we're constantly in our doing, thinking brains, and that does serve us. But really, our bodies is where we want to also live.
amazing. That almost sounds a little bit like a yoga. Is it similar to yoga where
Well,
the
see,
concentration?
yoga is directional. Do this pose and put your foot here, here, and there. So it's very directional, very instructional. Somatic movement is guided by you, by the genius intelligence of your body. I just give you very simple prompts. And so I guide you to tune into feeling, into sensation, into thought, and encourage you to move as that. So it can look different from anyone. There's no right way or wrong way to do it. So that's how it's different from yoga. So it's very intuitive, very body led, very unique to the person who's doing it.
Amazing. So I'm wondering if you could just, can you take us through one, maybe really quickly, just kind of talk to us how you would do that. Like, how would you guide
Okay,
somebody? Just say that I'm doing a session with you and we're online.
so I would guide you to right here, sitting where you're sitting. First, beginning to feel your feet on the ground. Notice how the ground is supporting you. And then you can gently close your eyes if you wish and just tune in. Okay, just tune in to your body and begin to notice any particular sensation or feeling. Don't shy away from it. So if you're right now, I'm feeling a little bit of tension or tightness in the tops of my shoulders. So I just begin to move with that tightness. What does that tightness feel like? So right now it feels a bit jagged. Doesn't feel very pretty. So I just move with that jaggedness. I feel my breath release and a sigh release. Your body's those are signs that your body's tuning into that tension and releasing. And then a little bit of more release. And then I get to just move with that release. So I'm just moving now with the release of that tension in my shoulders. Oh my gosh. And then I just feel kind of this wave of emotion wash through me because I feel like I've been holding so much tension. I feel like my eyes are watering a little bit. Um, and so it's really about you tuning into what you're feeling in the moment, moving as that thought, as that sensation, and welcoming that, whatever that is, not pushing it away and just moving. So it can include very gentle shoulder movements, very subtle head movements, very gentle undulations. It's whatever your body's calling you to do. And it can call up tears, it can call up emotions, it can call up, you know, previous wounding. So it really requires the practitioner, so myself as a coach, to hold that space for you. So I'm trauma informed. I'm not a trauma therapist. If things do come up for you, memories of past woundings, I do refer you to a therapist to help you. But some people don't even know they're carrying that. Some people don't even know, and that may come up in a session. So I then refer them to a therapist. And it's really about letting yourself be aware of what your body's holding for you. And when you realize that, I thought about, as I was guiding you through that it's a beautiful practice to come into that, the concept that you introduced on my podcast of body neutrality, of coming into this space of, okay, this is where I'm meeting my body right now. This is where I am now. I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to do anything. This is where I am now. And what does that create? It creates space for exploration of where to go next, of what lies ahead.
I
So,
love
so
it.
beautiful. I just thought of that now with this concept of body neutrality that you introduced me to.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think it's fantastic. It's almost, again, I feel like it's about giving yourself permission. And this is almost like giving yourself permission to experience the emotions that perhaps, you were suppressing inside. And, you give yourself and you're allowing yourself to be vulnerable and just experience whatever it is in whatever fashion that it comes out. And, right, because we hold all of those emotions inside, and we
Mm.
and they, maybe they come out as chronic back pain, maybe they comes out as, my leg hurting, my back hurting, my shoulders are so stressed out, right? And it could be all of that emotion and weight that you're carrying for so long, and now it's manifesting as, my shoulders are hurting and I don't know why they're hurting, right? So when you guide somebody and you're giving them that permission to experience that emotion, to release it, to see where it goes, I can see how that would really be almost like a washout, right? Like it would allow their body to just experience that emotion, and then once you experience it, then you can let it go. I think I was reading one time about something, and I tell this to my kids all the time, that emotions are, they are meant to be experienced, right? So when we hold them in, and we're holding them in, it's almost like that response that you have, that sympathetic response where you're running from a tiger, and your adrenaline and everything is going, and but then you finally, when you escape it, your body learned to just kind of release and let everything go, right? But when we hold in emotions, when we hold in, perhaps if it's sadness or tears, and we don't let ourselves feel that emotion, then it's almost like we're stuck in that one spot, and we didn't allow our body and our emotions to go to that full circle, right? Where we use that sympathetic response, and it's heightened, but we didn't give ourselves time to release it, to have that parasympathetic response where we actually release and we go back to, our original set point, which is, just being calm. And so we're just so strung up, we're so tight, right? Because we haven't experienced that full emotion. So I have actually three boys. And so when they feel sad, or if they're hurt or something, I ask them to just feel their emotions, right? Just let it out. Just, if you feel sad, you feel hurt, just cry. It's okay to cry. If you feel sad, just say what it is that, and allow your body to go through that full circle, right? And then reset so that you are at a neutral position. So you're not still stuck where the adrenaline is so high and all your emotions are so high, and you never had a chance to just release and allow your body to calm down.
Lucky boys to for them to have a mom who shares that wisdom with them. And yeah, I feel this practice can also make room for pleasure. So
Yes.
it opens, it brings you into that neutral space where you can then say, okay, then what is there to explore? When we turn, it's so easy for our brains to go to pain, to go to discomfort. That's where I went, right? I went to the discomfort in my shoulders. It's so we're wired to go to that, but we're also wired to go to pleasure. So when we allow ourselves to acknowledge the pain, we can go travel along the spectrum to pleasure, because it's all on one same spectrum.
Yes.
So then
Yes.
I use some of the same practices, some of the same movement practices to guide women to tune in to pleasure. Where do you feel pleasure? It can be in your little pinky finger. It can be in your belly, that warm feeling of being satiated and full and content, or it can be a feeling of softness in your heart. It doesn't have to be purely sexual. It can be
Yes.
just, again, it's about widening our concept of pleasure and knowing that we have the capacity for all forms of pleasure.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that you're able to, get somebody to release whatever it is that they're holding on to, so that it creates space now that they can experience something that is nicer, or something that's more pleasurable, something that feels good, right? When we hold on to all these things that cause us pain or trauma and things like that, it almost like, you're dealing with it, right? So it's almost like they're coming to see a therapist without really getting that type of therapy, but because you're allowing the body to go full cycle and experience everything that they're meant to experience, and then it's like they can move on now,
Mm.
right? They've been holding back for so long, that now once you're able to release that and let go of whatever it was that they were holding on to, now they can move forward and experience pleasure, experience the joy, experience whatever it is that they were meant to experience, by giving themselves permission. And I think that that really is kind of what it boils down to. So I love it. I love it that you guide everyone through that.
Mhm. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's part of my daily practice.
Amazing. So, how can people get in touch with you? They're listening to this, they're watching this, and they're like, wow, Gabriella is amazing. How can I get in touch with her? How can I follow her? How can I reach out to her?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Gabriella Espinosa. I also have a podcast, which you graciously accepted an invite. You said yes to pleasure. It's called Pleasure in the Pause, and you joined me on my podcast. So it's pleasureinthepause.com. And my website is gabriellaespinosa.com, where I have one-to-one coaching programs, group coaching programs, and I don't have a retreat scheduled yet, but I am planning some retreats for later this year. I live in Texas, where it's practically hot year-round, warm year-round. So I'm hoping to do something later in the fall, invite a group of, just create an intimate group retreat here in Austin, Texas, where I'm based.
Amazing. I love it. And before we go, what last pearls would you give to somebody that is going through midlife, is feeling stressed out, doesn't even know where to start, what to do? There's so much information overload. What would you tell that person?
I first start with, empowering yourself with knowledge. Find the doctors, the experts like yourself, like myself, that resonate with you, that that you can learn from. Do your research. Dive into the evidence. There's so much evidence-based literature there, and really empower yourself with knowledge. And then take that knowledge and advocate for yourself in the bedroom and in the doctor's office. So a lot of my coaching is about empowering women with knowledge about their bodies, about their sexual anatomy, about their pleasure anatomy, and how to communicate this with a partner, with a doctor if they're experiencing pain or discomfort. So really using this knowledge to empower yourself to advocate for yourself in the bedroom and in the doctor's office, and to really know that you are worthy of pleasure. It is your birthright, and it's not selfish or indulgent. And it has no expiration date. It has no expiration date or age limit. So midlife is a wonderful new chapter to awaken that.
Amazing. I love the fact that you said there's no expiration date, right? And to give yourself permission to experience pleasure. That is fantastic. So, well, we are done here, and it's been real and really intimate. And remember, this is not meant to be any type of medical advice. So please go speak with your healthcare provider. And until next time, this is the Muslim Sex Podcast. So thank you for listening to the podcast, and make sure you leave us a review, share and like the podcast. And if you leave me a review, I'd love to shout you out on social media. So be sure that you share it with all your friends. And thanks for listening.